real estate development has come to assume center stage in Nigeria. What would the worsened state of the economy and the disappearing capacity of the citizens to find a reasonable shelter? World Bank says 22 million people in Nigeria do not have the housing they need at the moment, the highest number in the world. Consequently, real estate development has emerged as a lucrative business for those who can shoulder the financial and professional commitment required for success in the sector. Now, in line with this, property developers in Lagos have held an interactive session to discuss ways and means of deepening quality of houses and profit-making in the business.
Sector side, it's really about land and infrastructure accessibility to build infrastructure needed to make cities thrive. And I think for the private sector, it's really about innovation, research and development, finding more ways to make home acquisition more accessible and affordable. And for those in financial services and private sector, it's really creating new mortgage and consumer financing products that allow people to own and aspire to own their own homes after time. So we really need to have frank conversations to build an ecosystem that everybody and every participant in this industry can thrive in.
The property developers that we currently have is a good initiative for property developers to come into the scene. However, it's also very important that we do it right, and we would set out models for which we should be able to meet out those huge housing gap. We meet them in a proper way, because some of the focus that some of the property developers are focusing on may not, or the models that they are working may not be able to achieve that housing, may not be able to achieve the housing solutions that we want. But through discussions like this, we're able to see how we can use the power of collaboration, partnership, technological solution, and creative ideas and discussions to be able to facilitate that objective.
If a developer comes into this space today and the person builds one house and sell, it has still reduced housing deficit. And so what we just try to do as developers is to do as many numbers as possible on a yearly level. I mean, everybody is aware that for us to be able to meet up with housing demand in Nigeria, we need to build nothing less than 1.7 million housing per annum for us to be able to meet. So if you have 10 developers who are bridging that gap by developing 10 units, it's still reduction.
Well, joining us now to share a few tips on how to maximize the substantial potential of the Nigerian property development sector is Chudi Kalu, a property development consultant. Welcome to Newsday.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Of course, we heard the very important points you raised during that interactive session, but I'd like to ask what solutions you might have come up with based on the collaborations that you had in terms of affordability for the less affluent.
Affordability is actually relative in terms of depending on the income level of the people and the house types that suits them.
That's why I said the less affluent, so we can focus on.
Okay. So when it comes to the deficits are quite high in certain areas, whereas you have also the issue of vacancy. People have properties that are not in use. So what we looked at during the interactive section was a property can be, you can have a property, but the property isn't in use. So the value of every property is making those property usable, rather than when you come down to certain parts, maybe the high-end location, you find that certain properties aren't even occupied. And whereas you go to a certain aspect of community, you have high level, you have this turnover where you have a lot of people seeking for accommodation. But a certain part of the society, you have virtually some of those properties empty, 7-bedroom duplex with mansion and all of that. So how then do you create solution such that you can take that the fund those people who have properties to be able to use? So we looked at what people like to live in, or what people like to pay for, is different from what they would eventually pay for. So it's important that for us to focus on the needs of the market rather than just assuming that this is what the market actually wants at the end of the day. Because sometimes the mistake most of us who are into property development make is that we assume what the market actually wants, and we want to operate at a very high level rather than operate at the level of what people can actually afford. So we looked at that during the interactive section, and we're trying to create a pathway for which we can help him to solve and become more relevant to the society.
Very good, Chudi. And still talking about more relevance to society, definitely real estate sector is a lucrative business, as it were, but the issue of developers without the prerequisite training and certification, you will agree with me, is a threat to qualitative housing, and that's what we're actually discussing here. And sometimes when you go to some places in Lagos, you find out that developers have become builders. They don't have the knowledge, and then you have these buildings collapsing and falling down. I'd like your thought on that. What should be done to ensure that the right people are actually put in place for a business such as yours?
Okay. In terms of, everybody have different roles that,
yes,
that they play. The property developers are entrepreneurs or who take advantage of the opportunities within the real estate space.
Yeah.
So in quotes, they are not actual maybe real estate practitioners or engineers or technical people on board. So what I think the government also needs to play a very strategic role in not just creating those policies, but ensuring that we enforce those policies. For example, when it comes to the issue of testing materials, for example, I will often say, for example, you want to use sand in a particular location,
yes,
to build a house, to build a particular house type. It is because it works in Abulegba does not mean it's going to work in Lekki, because the soil and the terrain where you're building is quite different. So if you take that developer and the developer says, you know what, I did it in Abulegba, take me to Lekki, you're probably going to have maybe a collapse maybe in building and all of that. And so it's for people who run certain tests on their development to ensure that those tests are carried out. You don't assume when it comes to construction. You don't say because you work there, you're not assuming that it's going to work there. The topography here might be different from the level of the level on the other end. So you have to carry out soil tests per time, do a technical survey that needs to be carried out per time, and also ensure that you work within the parameters of the plan for the property itself.
Here, Chudi, is there some kind of supervisory body that monitors, the role of developers regarding qualitative housing? That stops. Okay, fine. Somebody who's probably a quack, and like we said, he doesn't even have the prerequisite knowledge on going about qualitative assurances regarding this equipment used, the tools for building, and then you find a scenario whereby their buildings is of questionable nature. So is it a failure of the government, the state government in that regard, the federal government, or to actually monitor those who have been turned out as developers and they actually know the essence of the trade and do the right thing?
The essence of an effective system is everybody playing their own role within the space. Some people who are some developers, what they have is that they have the fund, and sometimes because they have the fund, they want to dictate the pace. But usually it isn't meant to be so.
That is exactly where I'm
and that's why you need to have a proper engineer. I shouldn't get to the point where I see somebody's house and I say, build my house this way, because I don't know the components you use in building. It is now left for the engineers who are on board, all the various engineers or the technical guys that are on the team that should also facilitate the process. It should not just be that, because I can have a vision, but it doesn't mean that I'm the one who will implement those vision. It is for me to say, this is what I want, then I have the technical team to follow in that direction. Like, for example, a building I want to build maybe a 3-story building, but the foundation in that particular area might require that I go 21 meters into the ground, which is almost like about 7-story building into the ground. Whereas in another area, you could just go maybe 10 meters into the ground. It's quite different. So the technical guys that are on the team should be able to fuel or be a frontliner in the process of construction. But most times, what we'll find out that the developers sometimes are the ones who take the front seat, whereas the technical guys take the back row. So it's for everybody to know what their parts really are, so that they can form that proper cohesion for construction.
Very well said. I want to go back to the statistics by the World Bank that says, 22 million people in Nigeria do not have the housing that they need at the moment. Based on your just concluded interactive session, of course, I always like to hear the word collaboration, because I think when minds come together, then we can have solutions. What timeline would you give for the housing needs of these 22 million Nigerians to be met, and what can be done to speed up that
I think
process?
one major part. I don't have a particular timeline, but what I know that needs to be done is that we need funding for development. The reason why where you hear a lot of people getting scammed is because people take advantage where there are no proper template for which people should work. Now, I think funding becomes a very critical part. Aside from the fact that, okay, you want to do construction and all, funding is very, very critical. Yes, the market is so big, but the market cannot fund itself. You need people or you need investors to come into that space to fund that particular dream such that the mortgage system can become highly effective. Because we have a situation whereby now people are beginning to talk about shared ownership, where you rent an apartment, I can come share that rent with you, and both of us that's what is currently happening in most parts. But however, most Nigerians cannot afford to own a house, and that's just the critical part. But they can afford to pay rent for their property, but so they can't buy some of these houses. So the focus will now be, how then do we build those houses so that people can pay rent on those property? So those are the fundamentals. That's where we have a disconnect. You have a situation whereby developers are building to sell. They are not even building because they want to rent out. So that is where, because everybody wants to quickly cash out. So you have the people who are on the downside who cannot afford to buy, so they don't have something over their head. So you find that them living in the slum, having to live in places that they don't even so much desire because they cannot afford to own the roof over their head. And therein lies a big problem, because you have a situation whereby you have over 70% of the population not able to afford, so they don't have houses. So even whatever government is trying to do to cleanse the society, to cleanse the environment, it's not achievable. So that's where the critical part of trying to fund those people, those property developers, come to play. Now, and those are some of the things we looked at during the interactive sessions we looked at. So property developers don't even have the capacity to do so by themselves, but they have the platform through which investors can come in. And that's why we looked at, okay, what do you need to make yourself investment ready? Because I'm not going to give you money because I'm Father Christmas. I'm going to give you money because you have certain structure and system to accommodate the investment that will come to you. So, for example, one of the things we looked at was that, do you have a system where if your business, maybe if you are not feeling too well today, will your business die because you're not feeling too well? And a developer who is the one who signs out all the construction, procurement and all that, you need to be able to create system. And that's why you need all other angles, the engineers, the procurement team, making sure that things work effectively, not because you want to be the father of all, but because you want it to run effectively. Those are the things that we looked at. And incidentally, we looked at that from the event. We looked at how then do you now position yourself to attracting investment, and that's where we looked at during the session.
Very good, Chudi. I'm still going to take you back to the issue of affordability here. And one of your colleagues at the conference was saying that 1.7 million housing will be needed per annum. Yeah. And he says at one point in time that, okay, if someone builds a house and perhaps rents it out or, gives it out or sells it, whatever, he's helping the process. But my worry here at the moment, and I've asked this question before when people from real estate come every now and then, where is the place of the mortgage sector? Those are supposed to be the custodians of helping, in terms of acquisition.
When I leave here now, they're going to have to. I know that they're going to have to flog me.
Exactly.
The mortgage system in Nigeria is
required all through.
The mortgage system.
Talking about all this issue of providing housing and everything, but when it comes to providing the funding for this at an affordable rate, it's an issue.
The mortgage system in Nigeria is nearly dead, if not dead. I'm not going to mice word on that. There's nearly, because it's highly not functional, and because you have a system because you have a huge market. The deficit that we're talking about is big. It's a huge market in itself. But the reason why we're not taking advantage of that. Now it is easier for me to access loan from maybe an investor abroad and invest in Nigeria because of the single digit loan that I'm going to access. Yeah. You find out that, okay, how many people can afford to buy a house outrightly in the UK, in the US? So you have a system in Nigeria where you are buying, you're fixing, you're having to do all of that yourself. So you are overburdened, you're overstretched. And you don't even, because some people spend their lifetime building a house, and they do Thanksgiving, maybe they're at the age of 60 because they've completed those houses. Whereas somebody in the UK has access to that house at the age of 40 or the age of 30 and is living there and has to pay maybe for the next 20 years. So how then do we create a system? Well, those are the things that we need to look at. Now, the mortgage companies or institutions, they also need help. And they may not admit it, but they really actually need help. And it goes beyond you having to say, okay, this, because the Nigerian market is not just for the Nigerians alone. It's a global and international market. Anybody can come in and tap into that market. Nigeria is huge enough because Nigeria embraces people from all walks of life or people from all race who come into this space. So Nigeria is global. It's a global market that everybody can take advantage of. However, while we are looking at it, Albert Einstein said something, that the problem that you currently face cannot be solved by the same solution you were at when the problem was created. So what do we do? So we need participation from outside, we need participation from inside, because the solution won't come from the top, it will come from the bottom. So we need to look at, okay, how then do we get solution across all board? Because it is a ticking time bomb, and that's just the truth, because people don't have houses, places to lay their heads at night. So you find out that, okay, people during the day you have a lot of people, but at night you still have people still roaming around the street, and so it creates a bad trend for your security architecture in the nation, because you don't know where people go to at night, where people go to lay their heads. So you need that, because you need a function, you need housing to work, for your society to work. And that's why, okay, we're looking at, okay, how then do we access funding? So one of the highlights of our event was to look at how to get people to participate. The market in certain aspects of the world are already saturated. So people want to invest in Nigeria, but do Nigerian companies or developers have the platform for which people should invest? And so we're looking at, how do you package yourself? How do you come on a platform where we can now make you investment ready? Those are the things that we're currently working on for most property developers. Because with the current system and structure that we have, the mortgage companies can't meet up, the developers cannot meet up. So what we are just only doing, I call some of the developers hustlers, including myself. So what we are simply doing, you're just hustling, yeah, and trying to take advantage of the opportunity. Whereas there's big work, there's a lot of work to be done that is at the bottom.
Well, what's next for the hustlers? What's the next step? Now that
so we're looking at, there's something we're coming up with in sometime in August in the UK. We're looking at how do we bring property developers together and make your investment pitch to investors. Let investors hear what you have. Now, the value of a property, the value of your project is when you see my project viable, and you can, on your own, without me telling you anything, you want to put money into the project because you see that this project is alive. And that's one of the things. So everybody, come and pitch, come and input your project to test. So don't just say, don't just be in your bedroom thinking that this project will be okay. So you're doing 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom and all that. Come to put it and let people come in and invest directly into your business. So we're going to be having that in the month of August for this year. After that, so it's not just going to be about talking, but it's also going to be action. Because you just can't say, okay, we have just talk, everybody go back to sleep. It's government's problem. It is our problem as a society, and it is for us to fix those problems. So we're looking at how, because we're looking at getting investors to come in. The UK government are already in support of what we're doing, and they're also facilitating that process with us too, so that, okay, people can come in, because investors are there, they want to make money. The investment companies, they have their, what you call, their KPI. They want to meet up with their KPI. So they have money that they want to invest in. But the question is my business attractive enough to receiving those funds? And those are some of the things that we're looking at for property developers.
Obviously, from what you've said, we still have a long way to go regarding the real estate sector, and of course, developers such as yourself. Chudi Kalu, property developer, many thanks for coming in to talk about the issues in the sector. It's good to have you.